Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's presentation, Focus on the Wild with NatHab's Photo Expeditions, is brought to you by NatHab Expedition Leader Mike Hillman. Mike is NatHab's Photo Expeditions Director and an expert naturalist guide with a lifelong passion for wildlife photography. Raised in Michigan's North Woods and trained in zoology at Michigan State University, Mike has spent his career helping others connect with the natural world, from leading nature walks as an Eagle Scout to working as a zookeeper, presenter, and expedition leader. A dedicated photographer since childhood and an accomplished birder with global experience, Mike brings a unique blend of field knowledge and creative vision to every adventure. Now based in Tucson, Arizona, he's excited to share tips, stories, and inspirations to help you capture unforgettable moments in the wild. Mike, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you for being here. The show is yours. Take it away.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome everyone to this next hour where I'm going to spend some time gushing about our photo expeditions and the photography that can be done here at Natural Habitat Adventures. To tack on what Rob was talking about, some of my background, I came to NatHab about 8 years ago, and I've been guiding in a variety of locations before I became the director of photo expeditions. Here's just a little bit of some of the places I visited. Guiding and photographing up in Churchill, Manitoba with the polar bears, in Greenland with the beautiful ice arches that you can find there floating by. Spent a lot of time in Alaska in a variety of places photographing bears and other unique and iconic Alaskan wildlife. Cut my teeth in guiding with NatHab in Yellowstone National Park, as well as spending a lot of time down in the Southeast in Florida, doing trips down there, out in the Southwest where I'm at now in places like Bryce Canyon National Park in that picture there. Also got the opportunity to work in Australia and start up our itineraries there, as well as even working up in the Northeast here in the US in Maine and Bar Harbor and Acadia National Park. So I've led expeditions for the last 8 years all over the globe to all sorts of places, primarily based here in North America, but of course going globally as well. Learning and teaching photography to our guests and getting a chance to provide some pretty amazing experiences along the way. So today, as I said, I want to talk specifically about photo expeditions. And so this is a section of our trips that Natural Habitat runs, which are very much designed with the idea of going out into the environment, going out and taking photos, learning about how to take photos and getting those shots that you were hoping for. So I want to talk briefly about exactly what makes a photo expedition at NatHab so special compared to other tour companies and other locations. First and foremost, I think we have pretty exclusive itineraries that take you farther afield than a lot of other companies do, and certainly a lot of your own chances to go out and build these trips on your own to go photograph. We have these abilities with NatHab and our entire team behind the scenes to build out some really special trips. So this is actually in Greenland, where we have an exclusive base camp in eastern Greenland, where you get to stay for a number of nights, go out into the field and take some fantastic photography of the ice, of wildlife, those beautiful landscapes. And that's just not something you'd be able to plan on your own. We get you out into those far-flung places and try to get you the photos that hopefully other photographers aren't coming back with when they visit those kinds of locations. Going along with that, we have a variety of exclusive camps, lodges, and ships that we work with that we own in some cases. This is one that I'm really excited about. This is Alaska Bear Camp. This is in Lake Clark National Park on the coast of Alaska. And just this year, we've added cabins to the camp. Previous to that, they were these kind of luxury style tents like you kind of see in Africa. But in this case, we've made some really sturdy, really cozy and warm cabins as an upgrade to this camp. So I'm really excited about that. And this is an opportunity where those bears are literally walking through their grass in front of those cabins, which is really special. So we try to take you to these places, not only to provide you some luxury, as well as an ability to go out and rest and relax in between your excursions to out to get photographs. But really, the point of these places are to go to some place that's going to put you right where the action is. And a place like Bear Camp is a great example of that. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our connection to conservation. Since 2003, NatHab has been partnered with World Wildlife Fund. We're their travel partner of their conservation initiatives. And part of that, not only are we bringing along WWF members and scientists in some cases, and even their staff, we donate a lot of our proceeds back to World Wildlife Fund and back to conservation in general. Since 2003, NatHab specifically has donated $10 million to World Wildlife Fund and their conservation projects. And what I think is really special is the guests that we bring with have donated a further $50 million specifically to World Wildlife Fund. So that's $60 million since 2003 that's gone directly from our trips through to the conservation that World Wildlife Fund does around the world, which is really special. We've even donated to other philanthropic efforts, another $345,000 to efforts in 71 different countries to help promote conservation and sustainability. NatHab was the first carbon neutral travel company back in 2007, and we continue to do that to this day, offsetting our travel, all our airfare, all those sorts of things to make sure that we're carbon neutral. We actually are now running in seven different countries. We're running electric vehicles as part of our itinerary. So maybe it's the electric van that picks you up at the airport when we start the trip, or it's even the electric safari vehicle that goes out to look for some of those wildlife in Africa. And really special, I helped kind of ground truth our first, the world's first zero waste itinerary. In 2019, we did that in Yellowstone, which is really special. And we continue to this day, do all sorts of ways to reduce the trash, then the impact that we have on each one of our trips, do a lot of recycling and other sustainability efforts to make sure that when we visit these very special places, we're having the least amount of impact as possible so that we can keep visiting them into the future and having those beautiful experiences with wildlife like this panda here in China. Now, when we talk about photo expeditions specifically, these itineraries are built around the photo first philosophy. So the idea is when we were building out these itineraries, talking with our photography leaders and the planners and those folks on the ground, what we're thinking about first are what are those kinds of images that a guest wants to get when you're out visiting a place like, say, Namibia in this picture here. You want to get those stunning desert landscapes. We have an opportunity to go out on a hot air balloon ride over these beautiful dune systems. And so getting a chance to get those kinds of photos of those, what are the iconic animals and those iconic landscapes that you really want to say, if I'm going to this place, I want these images on my camera when I come home. And so that's how we start designing these trips versus the kind of standard wildlife tour where we're designing around specific experiences, some downtime here and there, more cultural type activities. We're always thinking about with photo expeditions, what's going to help us get those photos that you're really dreaming about when you book a tour like this. And in addition to that, we're always thinking about small groups and like-minded groups. So the real power of going on a photography tour versus just going on a regular tour, not only you get smaller groups, which gives you a lot more room, more angles for your photography. You're not up against someone else while you're trying to get photos. You're also dealing with people that have the same interests as you, which I think is critically important. If you, as a photographer, have gone on a regular trip before, you might have had those situations where you're trying to get a photo, the sun's just getting to the right level so you get some beautiful golden hour sunset light, or that animal, that bird hasn't flown from the perch yet, but you're waiting for that shot where it picks its wings up. And you can feel that angst from the rest of the group that wants to get moving on to the next experience. That's not the case with photo expeditions, right? Everyone next to you is a photographer. And so you all have that patience to wait for that moment that you're hoping to get that shot of. And so that's critically important with a photo expedition, is to have these like-minded guests with you. And of course, that also means your photography leader is a photo guide, is a photo teacher, and an accomplished photographer in their own right. Now, I will say probably the number one question I get from guests or prospective guests and travelers is a photo expedition right for me? And the way I like to put it is, it's not about your portfolio. It's not about the images you've already made. It's not even about the camera gear you have. You could have a big mirrorless or DSLR with a 600mm lens, or you could have a point and shoot. Either is going to work great on a photo expedition. What's key, though, is your passion. So you want to be able to be out there in the field right next to your fellow photographers waiting for that same moment. And you may not have the same type of camera gear that they have, but if you're willing to put in that time, if you're willing to wait for those right moments and to enjoy photography in the same way, that means a photo expedition is right for you. In addition to that, we also welcome along traveling companions, spouses, that sort of thing. They are definitely welcome on these itineraries, and we'll do our best to make them feel at home and have a great experience out there in the field while we're getting those photographs. And a big component of our photo expeditions is education. Of course, we want to take you out into the field to get these photos, but we want to make sure that we help you along the way to get the photos that you're dreaming about and to make sure you don't miss those moments. And so not only do we start off with a photography talk at the beginning of the trip so you can get on the same page, learn the tips and tricks that are useful for that specific location and some of the experiences that you're going to have along the trip, but also get everyone up to the speed, understand the work and the teaching style of your photo guide, and be ready out there in the field. In addition to that, whenever we go back to our accommodation, our lodge, that sort of thing, we'll provide opportunities throughout the trip that you can do some further education. And certainly, as you're getting photos, you want to learn how to edit them better. There are some places where editing is especially tricky. I think of polar bears in Churchill, a white polar bear in a snowstorm. How do you edit for that? Those are opportunities where it's critical to get that editing help, and our photo leaders are there to do that towards the end of the trip or the beginning of the trip, whatever works for you. Now, this is another way I think this really sets apart NatHab from other photo tour companies is we run numerous departures in each location, both our regular trips as well as our photo trips, and which means we have an extensive knowledge of the location, extensive knowledge of the species, the interactions, work with all sorts of operators, those kinds of things. We're not running one of these trips a year. We're oftentimes running 2, 3, 4, 5 photo trips in a given destination. This is a great example. We have a very significant presence up in Churchill, Manitoba. In the summer, we run beluga trips. This is a new experience that's exclusive to our photo expeditions called beluga boarding, where you put on a wetsuit, or dry suit, excuse me, you get on a foam mat, and then you're at eye level with the belugas in the Churchill River that migrate in every single season. It's an incredible experience to use your underwater camera, your GoPro, that sort of thing, and get some really cool footage and shots. Then we go through the summer into fall, and that's prime polar bear season. And then we take the polar rovers out onto the Arctic tundra as those polar bears migrate to the shoreline and wait for the ice to freeze over. And then come further into the winter, we have our Northern Light season, which is happening right now in Churchill. So right now, our groups are up there getting phenomenal photographs of the aurora, which is a spectacular sight in a place like Churchill. It's in the perfect place along the aurora belt to get some really cool shots. So we're running trips constantly to these locations, which means we know all the ins and outs of those locations, and especially we know what to do if things go wrong. We can fix things, make things better, and ensure that you're going to have a great experience no matter what time of year you're going to one of these places. And this is critically important, is rest assured we won't cancel. What that means is that if you book a trip with us, regardless if it's a photo expedition, a regular trip, we don't cancel the trip. If you book the trip, you're going. It's very important to us that we want to make sure that you're not going to get an email 2 weeks, 4 weeks before the trip and say, sorry, we didn't book enough people, we're canceling the trip. That's not going to happen with NatHab. So you can be assured that we're going to go on those trips and see and get the photos that you're hoping for when you book with us. And I love this part is we have an extensive customer service team. We have well over 30 people with their job is to help you both in learning about the trips, booking your trips, getting prepared for those trips, helping you logistically along the way. We have a whole flight team that's in charge of helping book your flights to these international destinations, which can be very tricky. And if you have hiccups along the way, they can help you out. If the flight gets canceled, they can help you rearrange and rebook you and get you where you need to go as quickly as possible. And on top of that, get you all the way back and then help you after the fact. And so this entire team, their job is just to make sure that booking and going on a trip with us is painless and smooth as possible. And I think that's critically important when it comes to traveling internationally to some of these very complex and far-flung destinations. And last but not least, I want to talk about our guides. Our photography expedition leaders are fantastic photographers in their own right. But what I think about really sets them apart, it's the fact that they are expert naturalists as well. When you're going to these international destinations, going to these far-flung places, the wildlife there is going to act very differently than the wildlife you have back home. And having that deep ecological knowledge, understanding the landscapes and understanding the wildlife is critically important to know how to get those shots and set yourself up for those prime moments. To know when the lion is going to yawn so you can see those teeth. To know when that bird's going to take off from the perch. All those kinds of knowledge, where to set yourself up for those shots is critically important, and our photo leaders set that up for you. And so here is the whole class of our photo expedition leaders. We do a very good job of trying to get as many in-destination leaders as possible, and those that travel to the destination have extensive knowledge, as I talked about. But these are the team that will be taking you out on all these photo expeditions around the world. And something that just launched this January, maybe you've already gotten it in the mail, or maybe it might be coming, is we have a new catalog that's specifically not just all of our trips, but it's specifically just our photo expeditions. So keep an eye out for that, or you can go onto our website and sign up and get that mailed to you. A beautiful catalog showing a lot of excellent imagery, not only by our photo expedition leaders, but as well as our guests that have graciously offered their photos to us. This photo in particular right here was taken by one of our expedition leaders, Court Whalen, who is a fantastic photographer, and congrats to him for making the cover. So where do we go with NatHab? Well, we actually have 32 different photo expedition itineraries all across the globe in 26 countries. You name it. If you can think of an iconic picture that a wildlife or nature photographer would want to get, there's a very good chance we have an itinerary to take you there to get those shots. So we are spanning worldwide and seeing all sorts of stuff. There's not a day that goes by that a photo expedition isn't running somewhere in the world. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to take you through our entire catalog from region to region and talk a little bit about each one of these trips and what I think makes them special. What we put together here at NatHab is pretty amazing, and I'm really excited to share all the places we get to visit. We're going to start here with Africa. And I've got to say, as a wildlife photographer myself, this is the mecca of wildlife photography, right? This is where you go to get those iconic African animals and get those fantastic wildlife photos that you've been seeing for decades. And we're going to start here, wild Namibia. I'm going to start kind of off the beaten path from some of the more usual destinations. Namibia is a really special country. This is a place not a lot of people think about when they're going to Africa, certainly on their first fly over there. But this is a beautiful place to look at a desert landscape in Africa, and in particular the wildlife. When I talk to the guides there, what they think is really cool about this place is the desert adapted elephants and rhinos and cheetahs and lions. They have to edge out an existence at the very extreme end of what is survivable. And what that means is you get a lot of really interesting photos that give you that a sense of that survival instinct distilled into one image. We have a beautiful chance to go photograph sunrise on the sand dunes. We're also going to the coastline of Namibia, to the Skeleton Coast, where you can get pictures of sea lions and other critters that are wandering the ocean shoreline there. And even what I think is probably my favorite experience here is an aerial hot air balloon ride over the desert. As the sun's rising, you get some really beautiful shots from that perspective. It's like shooting with a drone, but you're there with your camera in that moment, getting the same experience as the drone would. So really cool trip. Moving from there into Botswana, which is probably one of the premier country destinations in Africa for wildlife and safari photography. This is a classic trip for us, 12 days, June through October. And this takes you from the Okavango Delta to the Nyanti Plains. So beautiful landscapes, chock full of wildlife. We have private camps on some remote reserves that you go to that other people don't have access to. You can see in the picture on the right there, the elephants visit you at camp. You don't even have to get up from your dining room table to get some really fantastic wildlife shots, which is pretty crazy. Akin to Namibia, we'll get you up in the air as well. In this case, we'll take you in a helicopter, and critically important here, these are doors off helicopters. So you don't have to worry about the glass reflection, dirt, scratches, anything like that. You're getting a photograph. Each of our guests will have a window seat, and you're photographing out over these vast, expansive landscapes and seeing those animals, both large and small, migrating across the delta and the plains. Then from there, a different time of the year, we have what's called our Botswana green season photo trip. I've heard from several photographers that this is their favorite time of year to visit Botswana because this ecosystem becomes alive in the rainy season and you get these beautiful, brilliant greens. So it's not necessarily the dry grass of the savanna, but you're getting those deep greens that really stand out with those wildlife photographs. This is also a time when we get grazing herds of 50,000 zebras and wildebeest moving through this area. And it's coinciding with the calving season, which means fantastic baby animal photography. It also means fantastic predator photography because this is the time of year when the predators are at their prime when they're hunting these herds. Just like the regular Botswana trip, you'll also get a chance to be on a doors-off helicopter ride, and you even get to see Victoria Falls this time of year at its peak flow, of course, when the rains have been coming through. So beautiful photography and classic safari photography for Botswana. Now down in southern Africa, we've got our secluded South Africa photo expedition. This is your straightforward Big Five photography trip. It's a small group. You're heading into the Kruger region, which you may have known all about already. Fantastic place to get photographs. We visit some very interesting and private reserves in Sabi Sands, which is renowned for its leopard sightings, which if you've been a photographer visiting Africa, it might be your second or third time before you get a chance to see leopards because they can be quite elusive. But on this South Africa trip, they're a lot more common than you'd see in other places. And you even get opportunities to go out on night drives and look for the hunting predators, which in the spotlights and in the red lights can be really fantastic photography to get that primal hunt of these lions, leopards, and the like. Moving from there off the continent of Africa to that big island out on the east, we've got Madagascar, which as a wildlife photographer, if you want the most unique wildlife photos in Africa, you have to go to a place like Madagascar where there's so many endemic species found nowhere else in the world but on this island here. This is where you see lemurs. This is where you get lemur photographs. This is where most of the chameleon photographs can be had. You're visiting 4 different national parks as well as private reserves. This is a big island, and so what we do to maximize this, and this is the case with a lot of our trips, is rather than doing an overland drive to location to location, we'll oftentimes use a charter flight because we want to limit that travel time as much as possible and maximize that time down on the ground getting the photographs you want. So we have a lot of charter flights here to take you up and right into the next great spot to get photographs. And of course, everyone, when they think of Madagascar, not only are we thinking about the wildlife, but we're thinking about the landscapes. Madagascar looks so different than the rest of Africa. And one of the iconic places are the baobab trees. And so getting those massive, big, fat trees like you see in that golden picture towards the upper right there, getting those kinds of shots as well. Now, when we talk about Africa, we are talking about these vast herds, and we've got 2 different styles of trips, one in Kenya and one in Tanzania, to get photographs of the Great Migration. And so we're at these camps that are seasonal. They move from place to place because they follow these herds as they're going along, just like the predators would. You get these dramatic river crossings. If you've thought about those pictures, the National Geographic videos of the wildebeest jumping into the river where the Nile crocodiles are waiting for them, Kenya and Tanzania are the places where those kinds of videos, those kinds of images are made. And so you come to a place like this to get those dramatic river crossings, get the dramatic numbers of wildebeest and zebra and the like. You get here is critically important. Our photographers and their expertise put you in the right places for those kinds of shots, making sure the light and angle is correct, as well as making sure that you aren't there with 16 other Jeeps photographing the same crossing. So you really are in these private places where you've got a lot of these experiences to yourself. And we even spent a bit of time in Nairobi at the national park right just outside the city, getting some really great photographs as kind of a warm up before we get you out into the field. Like I was saying with Kenya, we have Tanzania as well, getting you out there into the ecosystem and photographing these vast migrations. You're deep here in the Serengeti, which I'm sure you've heard of before, getting those herds of thousands of them. If you've seen those pictures of those wildebeest where it just seems to go on for miles of endless open sky and endless grass and endless animals, that's a place like the Serengeti here in Tanzania. We adjust the itinerary based on when the peak migration is. So where you go may be different than in February will be different than the same person going in July, because we're following those herds. It's critically important. And we're getting these prime Serengeti camps where you can be photographing not far from your tent and getting some really cool stuff. And last but not least, in Africa, probably one that I want to go on the most is our ultimate gorilla photo expedition. And this is a trip into Uganda and Rwanda to photograph the mountain gorillas, which as a wildlife photographer, I think this is probably one of the prime species that you're hoping to photograph are gorillas, because of their relation so close to humans, the photographs you can get, the emotions you can capture in those images are just by and far so powerful compared to anything else you can do in Africa. And so these are a really special trip in a lot of ways. You get to see on 4 different treks in Uganda and Rwanda, you get to look for gorillas. You get opportunities at chimpanzee, golden monkeys, and other primates. And what I think is really cool about this is you're not going to travel all the way to these countries in Africa and just get primates. We also have an opportunity to do safaris like you would traditionally get on these other trips. So you can still get the giraffe and the elephant shot and the lion photos. In addition to that, all on this one trip to photograph gorillas, which I think is really special. It's a one-stop shop for some of the best opportunities you're going to have in Africa. Now, moving from Africa, let's talk a bit about North America, where I spent a lot of my time guiding. This trip in particular is one of my absolute favorite, the Ultimate Alaska Photo Expedition, partially because I do a lot of these trips. In fact, I'll be doing an Ultimate Alaska trip this June. I'll be leading one of those. And we start up in Fairbanks and we visit 3 national parks. We do Denali National Park, we do Kenai Fjords National Park, and depending on the time of year, we either do Katmai National Park or Lake Clark National Park. In Lake Clark, we go to our Alaska Bear Camp, where you're staying in bear country, where you can look out your window and see bears walk by. In Katmai, that's where Brooks Falls is, the famous spot where you can see that picture I got down there on the bottom left of that salmon jumping into the bear's mouth. That's Katmai. So this is, I call this my ultimate Alaska sampler. You get the mountains, you get the coastline and all the coastal wildlife like puffins and sea otters and orcas, and then you get the bears, all in one big expansive trip. It's really special. Now, if you really want to settle in with our bears, which are an iconic North American species, we have 2 trips for that. We have the Grizzly Ship Photo Expedition. That's Kodiak to Katmai. So you're flying into Kodiak, the island, and then getting onto our private charter ship, the Ursus, and you're spending 8 days out on the landscape along Katmai, seasonally into different bays and locations, getting some phenomenal on-the-ground bear photos. So it's a fantastic trip. If you think all I want to do is photograph big Alaskan bears, this is definitely the trip for you. We also have the Alaska Bear Camp Photo Expedition, another one of my favorites because I've led a number of these trips. And this is where you're going to our private in-holding in Lake Clark National Park. NatHab has a camp inside the national park where you literally, just on the side of our property, you're stepping into the national park proper and getting to see those national park bears wandering by. This is a fantastic trip in its own right. It provides you the luxury and ease of being at a centrally based camp and then out there into the field to get the photographs of those bears every single day. We'll take you out a few times each day, get some photographs of mom and cubs, maybe a male chasing after a female, come back, have lunch, and then do it all over again throughout the rest of the day. It's really a cool opportunity to be with some excellent bear naturalists. And because it's so remote, you actually take a bush plane flight over the Cook Inlet from Homer, Alaska, into where our camp is. It's a really special place to be. One of my favorite places in the entire world. I love bear camp so much. Now from there, we go into Canada and we have our polar bear trips. So from Alaskan brown bears to Canadian polar bears. These are fantastic trips to get to see an animal that very few people in the world will ever get a chance to see. Polar bears are hard to come by. They're hard to photograph. So it's critical to go on one of these trips to try to find these up there in the far north. So this is Churchill, Manitoba, like I spoke about earlier, and it's an opportunity to go on our custom polar rovers. You can see that kind of school bus looking vehicle right there that's kitted out specifically with polar bear viewing in mind. There's both indoor and outdoor viewing opportunities. So you can shoot through the window, you can shoot outside on the back deck. And oftentimes the polar bears will wander by. They may be curious and come a little closer. It just depends on the particular bear. But you're driving out on this Arctic landscape, finding bear after bear after bear as they wait for the Hudson Bay to freeze over, where they're going to spend the rest of the winter hunting seals. Absolute phenomenal place. And some of the best photographers that work for NatHab are specifically working up in the polar bear photo expedition. It's a fantastic trip. Now, unlike the regular Churchill photo expedition, the Tundra Lodge photo expedition, kind of like bear camp, you're staying in polar bear country. We stay on this elevated train car style lodge where you're staying overnight in polar bear country. I've had the opportunity to lead these trips, and let me tell you, when you're in bed and you look out the window and you just see a polar bear walk by, like how many people have been experienced to do that? So rather than staying in the town of Churchill, you're staying out in the tundra proper and overnight, and you get just extended time with the polar bears. If all you want is Arctic photography and all you want is bears and other wildlife that are native to this region, this is a great trip for you. Now, if you want to come back in the dead of winter in Churchill, this is when you're doing the Northern Lights photo expedition. So Churchill, Manitoba is right along what we call the Aurora Belt, which is a band of latitude around the northern globe where you get really strong aurora because of the way aurora is developed as the sun shoots its magnetic rays and particles towards the earth. You get this really cool belt of aurora all around the north. That's why people talk about places like Fairbanks, Alaska and Iceland, is because they're on that same aurora belt. What's special about Churchill is because of its extreme cold, you get a vast amount of time without any clouds in the sky, which means that you're going to have the best chances of seeing aurora, not just one night, but multiple nights throughout your trip because of where it's situated. We have a lot of private aurora viewing locations that we ourselves with our partners have built and set out in Churchill. So you can visit those places. There's not going to be any other photographers but your group in that spot getting the photos that you're getting. We're thinking about those foreground elements like the black spruce trees and other beautiful parts of the northern latitudes. We even have an exclusive stay at White Whale Lodge where it's away from the town proper, which means you can step out the door and get photos from your lodging of the aurora rather than having to leave town in a vehicle and then go out. And critically important here is the aurora is a tricky thing to photograph, and it's critically important you have a photography guide who knows what they're doing. And the same guides that are taking you out to look for polar bears are the same guides that are going to the same places to look for the northern lights later in the season. Now, come summer, you can come back when it's a bit warmer in Churchill, and you can get beluga whales that migrate from Hudson Bay and the north into the Churchill River right along the town there. And we're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of these whales you can see on a trip. And they're swimming by. We take out skiffs so we can get photographs from them above. But we also do that beluga boarding that I was talking about earlier, where you get these underwater type shots like you're seeing in the bottom left here. You also have the opportunity for aurora. It's not as common, but it definitely happens. And you even have opportunities for polar bears as well. The key here is you won't have polar bears in the snow, but you'll have polar bears in this Arctic landscape. Beautiful rocks and glades where you can get some great photographs potentially of them if they're out. And then you also get that history and culture that's really rich in a place like Churchill, which was prominent in the fur trade and in Canada's history of becoming its own country. Now, from there, back into the United States, we have some really cool national park trips. We spent a lot of time in America's Serengeti, in Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park. Our summer trip is 8 days, May or September, which is the prime time as a photographer to be there. There's less crowds, and that's when the wildlife activity is really at its best, especially for photography. Our guides have a deep local knowledge of the ecosystem, which is critically important in a place like this, because to know where that wildlife is generally is great, but to know where it was yesterday is even better. And so our guides work there quite frequently. We have the systems in place to know where all the activity is up to the minute to be able to go out and try to find these species and get all the shots, the iconic Yellowstone animals you may be thinking of. We even get a chance to go out on the Snake River and float and get some beautiful Grand Teton panoramas as we float by. And we have very specially designed vehicles called our North America Safari Cruisers, and they're built with a top that pops up so that you can photograph out of the top of the vehicle without ever having to leave, which is great for wildlife safety. We have room for all of your camera gear and make sure everyone has a window seat, and you're going to get some great shots while you're out there in Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. And what's great is we come back in winter. And when I talk to a lot of our guides that work in Yellowstone and Grand Teton, they say winter is their favorite time of year. And there's a few different reasons why. One, it's easier to see the wildlife. They stand out against the snow. But you're also getting, kind of like we talked about with Namibia, you're getting this harsh time of year in Yellowstone, which means you get this really primal survival strategies from our bison and other herbivores. And this is also the prime time for predators like coyotes and foxes and wolves, because they're out hunting these animals where it's very tough for these bison to get by, which makes a great time to be a predator in a place like Yellowstone. We take you via snow coach into the interior of the park and get a chance to see Yellowstone and Old Faithful, as well as all those prime spots where you can get some fantastic wildlife. Now, moving from North America down into Latin America, we have some fantastic wildlife and landscape trips here as well. First, one of my favorites is our Galapagos Wildlife Photo Expedition. When we talk about Africa is big and is a mecca for wildlife photography, I think next for me would be Galapagos, because here the wildlife are so accessible and so unique and so interesting in a variety of ways, which means it's just a playground to be a photographer and to photograph these animals. What's special about this trip is when you book a Galapagos trip, normally they ask you, do you want to do the Eastern Islands or do you want to do the Western Islands? And so that means you're only doing a subset of the Galapagos archipelago. But in this case, we do them all. We're doing most of the islands. We do the East and Western itinerary over the course of 17 days on our private ship called the Petrel. And we're visiting 13 islands. And what that means is you get to see a variety of wildlife, really everything that the Galapagos has to offer. But on top of that, you're getting to see these species numerous times. So you're visiting not one blue-footed booby colony, but you may be visiting a second one. You'll see a lot of marine iguanas. And we even have our own private tortoise camp where outside your door, we have the famous Galapagos tortoises just sauntering by. And so it's a really phenomenal trip that's very extensive and gets you everything you're hoping for in a place like the Galapagos. Now, a new trip for us this year is our Machu Picchu and Sacred Valley photo expedition. And so this is taking you into Peru to, of course, photograph the famous Inca Machu Picchu, as well as the cultural history and the landscapes from Lima to Cusco and throughout this region. It's a really cool trip in a variety of ways. We get a number of opportunities at prime light to visit Machu Picchu, so you're there when you're going to get your best shots. We get a lot of cultural photography here. The textiles and the artisans here are phenomenal, and so those photographs in their own right are really special. This is one of those places where we just launched this year with an electric vehicle that we get to use. It's one of the first in the country, if not the first, certainly for a tour company, to use an electric vehicle on a trip like this. So a special place, and I'm really excited about this trip coming on to our itinerary list. Now, another one that's really top of my list is the Brazil Jaguar and Wildlife Photo Expedition. If I could pick one trip to go to tomorrow, that would be this trip. And the reason for that is right now we're visiting in Porto Joffre in the region, the best places to photograph jaguars anywhere in the Americas. And on top of that, we're seeing consistently year after year, the jaguar sightings, the jaguar photography is getting much more consistent and much better than it was in years past, which is phenomenal. You can talk about a lot of countries in the Americas where you might see a jaguar once in your life if you're visiting or living there. But in a place like this area of Brazil, in the Pantanal, it's much more regular for our trips to see these and get some phenomenal photos. And on top of that, you've got all the other wildlife that comes along with this vast landscape of wetland habitat between macaws and parrots, capybara, the giant river otters, anteaters, tapir, and all sorts of stuff that are building out the ecosystem that is the Pantanal. So a phenomenal trip to see a whole host of wildlife in this part of Brazil. And if you go a little further south, you get into Patagonia, which is a fantastic wildlife destination, but it really excels as a landscape destination. You have the Fitzroy landscape, you have these peak fall season colors, so you get these rich oranges and reds. You get to see the ranch life and the culture around that, what they call the estancias. And then we even get private cruises out to visit some of the glaciers in this rugged habitat in Torres del Paine National Park as well. And we have opportunities to look for and try to photograph the elusive pumas in Patagonia, which is really special to get this top predator in an ecosystem like this. Really otherworldly landscape and a cool spot to go photograph. Then from there, we've got the monarch butterfly expedition, which is one of our favorites. This is an opportunity to go visit probably one of the largest migrations of any species, certainly the largest insect migration that can be viewed. These are thousands, hundreds of thousands of monarchs that visit this region of Mexico in these high montane environments. And to go into a place like this, to talk to the guests and the photographers that have been there before, it changes you when you visit a place like this, to see all these beautiful monarch butterflies fluttering around. You go into these forests and what you see is just rough bark, and all of a sudden the sun hits the bark just right and it starts to flutter, and you realize that entire tree trunk is monarch butterflies. You can't even see the bark. That's how many there are. It's a really special trip to see a unique part of the natural world, these monarch migrations. And of course, to go to a place like this, you want to have those opportunities to go multiple times. We have extended time at 2 different monarch sanctuaries. And to get photographs that really do justice to these monarchs, you need the help, especially with macro. And that's where our photography guides come in fantastically to help you get the shots you're hoping for. Now, moving from Latin America across the Atlantic into Europe, we've got a few beautiful destinations to photograph. Iceland is a fantastic example of that. This excels both as a wildlife, but especially as a landscape destination. I've had a chance to visit Iceland, and let me tell you, every single thing about Iceland is photogenic. The waterfalls, the side of the road, there's phenomenal things to do, and it's really important to have a guide with you to be able to pick out the very best of the best to visit and do so efficiently. So over the course of 12 days from June through September, we're visiting some of the most iconic places and some of those places you may never have heard of, but are incredibly photogenic, from ice and glacial rivers to beautiful, beautiful waterfalls. And probably one of my favorite things is you do a private flight seeing over glaciers and these landscapes. If you've ever seen those photographs, those aerial shots of those braided rivers of beautiful blues and grays and greens, you can get those kinds of shots on a flight like this over Iceland. So it's a phenomenal opportunity to get those beautiful landscape photos. And we have opportunities with wildlife as well, from the Arctic fox to, in the summer trips, we have puffins are possible, and you get some really great puffin shots at some of the places we visit. If you go later in the fall, you may not get the puffins as they migrate out into open ocean, but you get some exceptional fall colors and some real other cool opportunities as well. So Iceland is a phenomenal destination for a variety of reasons. You can't take a bad picture of Iceland. I dare you to. A trip I've led as well is in East Greenland. This is my photo here of a humpback whale as we're looking at the Greenland ice sheet behind us. I'm in one of the boats with some photographers, and my co-guide is in the other boat with some more photographers getting different angles on the same beautiful animal as it was swimming by. This is mostly a landscape trip. You do see some whales and wildlife, it's certainly possible, but you're thinking about the Arctic, the Greenland ice sheet, you're thinking about these beautiful icebergs and some really rich culture from the Greenlandic people. This is a special trip. This really gets you out in the middle of nowhere at our base camp. And you get to see some phenomenal opportunities for some great golden hour light that time of year in August, as well as at the peak season timing for northern lights. If you're going to see those on a trip, it will be this time of year. And when the conditions are just right, which oftentimes happens, we'll take you on into an ice cave inside of a glacier, which you can get some beautiful photos in those cases. And then from there, we have a new trip that we're opening up this year in Scotland. We do a regular trip to Scotland, but we've never led a trip specifically for photographers here. And you can see this route here through the Hebrides and the Skye and Highlands ecosystems and landscapes. Again, beautiful landscape photography, some interesting cultural photography between the bagpipers and the like. Those Scottish Highland cows that are iconic of this region. Get opportunities to photograph those up close. And of course, the beautiful castles and the rich history of Scotland all in one trip. So it's a really cool trip, and I'm excited that we're launching this year. And our last region to fly around to is Asia and the Pacific. Another trip I've led, or we're starting this year as a photo trip, I've led the regular version of this, is our Southern Australia and Tasmania photo expedition. So this is an opportunity to visit Southern Australia, South Australia, Tasmania, and it's an opportunity to get the iconic wildlife. When you think of Australia, you think of the animals that we're going to visit. The kangaroos, the koalas, the wombats, echidnas, platypus, all that in one trip. You get at 7 different national parks. You get along the Great Ocean Road, which is some stunning landscapes, some sandstone coastlines, beautiful ocean coastline photography. And again, like we've done on other trips, this is a trip where we're going to cover a lot of ground. And so chartering flights in between these destinations so that we're getting there quickly and getting you on the ground to continue getting some great shots. And they even have an opportunity to go to Maria Island, which is off the coast of Tasmania, to a very unique ecosystem where wombats are readily photographed, as well as some other species, and even opportunities because Australia and Tasmania are such rich mammal habitats. A lot of the wildlife comes out after night. So we have opportunities for night photographing of wildlife as well as astrophotography to get the southern night sky, which is really cool. Now moving up into Asia, we have our Grand India trip. This is another one we're launching this year. This is our extensive ultimate India sampler, kind of like the Ultimate Alaska trip, where you're getting an Indian safari in a variety of places. You're seeing the culture. You're visiting 3 different national parks plus Delhi, getting extended permits because the national parks there are very highly regulated, especially when it comes to tour groups and photography groups. So we have extended permits. You can get in there earlier and stay longer than a lot of other groups to get all the photos you're hoping for. And getting, of course, guided trips into some of these very interesting and photogenic cities like Delhi to get some really cool shots. If you want to go to India once, this is the trip you're going for. Now, kind of like we have our Ultimate Alaska trip and then we have our bear trip, we have the same in India. We've got the Ultimate India trip, the Grand India trip, but then we have the trip that's specifically just for tigers. If you want to photograph tigers as your main focus, but still get some other great wildlife, this is the trip for you. We optimize for the season to make sure you're getting prime time to view and photograph tigers in a variety of places. You're getting wildlife like the sloth bears and monkeys and even leopards, and you're even going out on a boat to get some of the wetland wildlife species as well, which the plentiful birds in India. They're just as much as you're going to photograph mammals, you'll be photographing some really interesting and colorful birds that are native to India. So this is a great trip. If you're thinking tigers are what I want to come back with photos of, you can definitely do this one and ensure you're going to get some really great stuff. Now, a more elusive cat is our snow leopards, which you would find in northern India. So you start off in Delhi and then head up to the Himalayas, where you're going to spend a week-long immersion in leopard habitat for your best chances at spotting these. These are alpine cats, which are very hard to spot. So we work with local spotters and local guides to ensure that you can find these cats and have your best chance at getting photographs of them. This is a trip where if you're going to bring your biggest lens, it'll be a trip like this, because they're going to be off on these beautiful mountain landscapes doing what they do best, living in their natural habitat and hunting the variety of herbivores that are out there. But this is a trip where you're going to feel like you're in the wild. You're in a place like the Himalayas and photographing in these rugged mountain terrain. And what's really critical here is there's not a lot of places to stay in a far-flung place like this. And we've secured the nicest place for miles upon miles in any direction, so that you're going to be able to get a hot shower, enjoy a good meal, and then get out there again to keep looking for these elusive ghost cats, as they call them. We also spend time in China. This is 14 days throughout China and some of the best wildlife opportunities you can have. The chances of seeing wild pandas are exceptionally rare, but what we do to add to that is we visit 4 different giant panda research bases where you get to see the pandas that in a more controlled environment, there's research that's being done on them, breeding programs to ensure the species survives. And so you have opportunities to photograph pandas there in China up close. We also have opportunities to go out and photograph a variety of other Asian wildlife, including the golden snub-nosed monkey, which you can see in the upper right. Even chances at wild red panda is not uncommon. And of course, the cultural photography in a place like China is super important. So you've got the terracotta warriors, and we've got some really stunning cities that we visit, which are photogenic as well. And last but not least, our last trip that we visit is our Borneo trip. So this is very much a wildlife trip where we're photographing. Our prime suspect here is the orangutan, as well as you visit the Sun Bear Center, which is a research and conservation base specifically with captive sun bears. We get a chance to photograph. We go to the famous Danam Valley to photograph a variety of rainforest wildlife, like the hornbills you see up there. And we even have opportunities are becoming even better as we adjust and tweak this itinerary to look for Asian elephants along the river systems there. And we even get up at sunrise into the canopy of these stunning rainforests to get some fantastic landscapes as that fog and the morning dew rolls in. We get to see some great photographs there, as well as the birds that fly by waking up in the morning. This is a true rainforest trip in every sense of the word, and so you get some really cool rainforest wildlife photographs in a place like this. So with that, I've gone through every trip that NatHab runs as a photo expedition into this year, into next, into 2027. So from here, I want to open it up to any questions you may have generally about the trips, or maybe any tips from a photo guide that you would like to know about some of these photo trips, how to go on a photo expedition, those kinds of things. I'll open it up there. We have our phone number if you're interested in calling our staff. Remember, our team of 30 plus that are there to help you. And then if you just want to visit the website and maybe get the catalog mailed to you, you can visit nathab.com/photo, and that'll bring you right to all of our trips. So thanks for everyone for listening.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. So before we dive into the question section, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have questions, please feel free to submit them via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the upper right-hand corner and click on those 3 lines. That will open up the question field, and go ahead and submit your questions there. All right, so Mike, if I'm an avid photographer, but my spouse only has an iPhone and binoculars, will this trip be good for the 2 of us to go on together still?
Yeah, definitely. I think these kinds of trips, certainly there's a photography focus, but at the end of the day, we're going to see the same wildlife the regular trips are, where you're not necessarily expecting photographers to show up. So when we talk about a place like Borneo, like, oh, we're going to go photograph orangutans and we're going to try to get as close as we're able to. I mean, as a non-photographer, that's going to be a phenomenal experience in its own right. And so definitely, if you're a non-photographer, a spouse, a travel companion, it's fantastic for that. I also say that, well, I don't like to push it. If you're bringing just an iPhone, you're bringing just binoculars. As a iPhone photographer, you can still get some phenomenal pictures on these trips. And in some cases, it's unfortunate having a big expensive camera that the iPhone can get a really good shot of the same scene. The fact that these smartphone cameras have gotten really good these last few years, I mean, they get northern light shots easier than any big camera ever will. And so you can still have a very great experience with just that smartphone as a traveling companion. If you're there interested in getting some photos and having those same experiences as the person you're traveling with, these are great trips for you to go on.
Great, thanks, Mike. So Mike, can you talk about what camera gear that you like to use?
Yeah. So it will vary, certainly, when you talk about the breadth of the trips that we go on, exactly what you want to bring where. There's very specific trips like a Northern Lights trip where you want a very wide angle lens that's super fast, like an f2.8, f1.4, so you can let in as much light as possible because you're photographing at night by its very nature. There's other places like the snow leopards where you want a really big lens, a 600 millimeter, an 800 millimeter, something like that. But generally speaking, on most of these trips, you're going to do very well with at least 2 lenses. What I bring on most of my trips are a great landscape lens. Usually I bring my 24-70 zoom lens. And then I bring my 200 to 600 zoom lens as well. So you've got one lens for landscape. It also is great for travel photography, cultural photography, because you're in that 55 millimeter range, 80 millimeter range, close to that, which is great for those kinds of shots. And then you have some sort of zoom lens. Maybe it's a 100 to 400, maybe it's a 200 to 600, a 200 to 500, something like that, which will be great for most of your wildlife photography. And in some cases, if you don't have as big of a lens, you can purchase a teleconverter, which can double the length of the lens you already have. Just research your camera brand and lens specifically to know what works for you. But generally, bring a good landscape and bring a good wildlife lens, and you're going to be happy on 98% of these trips.
So, Mike, that brings up the question. We had a guest who was on a photo excursion with another group, and the guide was a Nikon shooter, but knew nothing about Canon. Is that an issue on a NatHab trip? And generally, are cameras so much different that the advice would vary from camera to camera?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, all our photo expedition leaders are going to shoot a variety of things. I shoot Sony specifically. We've got guides with Nikon's, Canon, Ohm system, even Fujifilm. Now, what we expect of our guides is not only that they know their camera system intimately, but they know how to operate and work with guests on the other systems as well. That's an expectation of all of our photo expedition leaders. So I shoot Sony, but I can pick up your Nikon or your Canon and still get a comparable image. And so if you're having issues with settings or understanding your camera and the differences between one system to the other, that's entirely why your photo expedition leader is there. So don't worry about that. I also say, in addition to your photo expedition leader, the other guests on your trip can be equally a great resource to help you out when you're on one of these trips. Find those other guests that are working with the same systems you are, and they can sometimes teach you stuff that you may not know about your own camera because they learned a little bit differently. They learned a few different settings differently than you. And between your guide and your guests, your co-guests, if you will, your co-travelers, you'll be able to learn a lot about how to utilize your camera and get the shots you're hoping for. I will say on that kind of vein of thought, our photo expedition leaders, one of the things that's critical about them, especially when we compare it to some of the other tour companies, is our guides are there to make sure you get the best shots possible. They'll photograph from time to time, and that's super important for a variety of reasons. One, if I'm on a trip and my photo leader isn't taking shots, does that mean this is not a great place to get photos, that he doesn't even want pictures himself or herself? But instead, they're going to make sure everyone's set up, maybe get some photos over the shoulder so they can educate and teach you about what kinds of shots they're getting. But they're there to make sure you get the photos you're hoping for first and foremost. So keep that in mind, that's what we're here for when we're on these trips. We're not here to get our own portfolio.
Thank you so much for answering that, Mike. How physically challenging is the Monarch butterfly trip? And in general, how physically challenging are the NatHab photo trips?
Oh, so it varies a lot depending on what trip you're talking about. When we talk about, let me look up the exact title here. So this is a moderately difficult trip, the Monarch trip. It depends a lot on the trip exactly what you're talking about when regards to the difficulty level. That's one of the cool things about NatHab's website, especially we've just updated this recently. Each one of these trips have a difficulty rating that's listed on the trip. So if you pull up one of these trips, you go on the left side, you'll see a difficulty slider where you can look at, okay, how does this trip compare to others? We have some trips like our polar bear trip where, because the nature of polar bears, you don't necessarily want to be on the ground with them in this particular landscape. And you're going to cover a lot of distance, which means for the most part, you're in a vehicle most of the trip. You're at your lodging. You're going from one lodging to a restaurant in the vehicle. It's a very low activity trip. And then you have other trips like the Monarch trip, like the Gorilla Trek, where it can be a little bit tougher. And so you can read the information on each one of those trips and get to know specifically for your physical needs and what the trip's going to entail. There's a beautiful detailed description. There's even pictures in some cases of the trails, the terrain, those kinds of things to understand what's going to work best for you when you're out on one of these trips.
Gotcha. Thank you. Is there a New Zealand photo trip? Are we going to be looking at maybe one of those?
There currently isn't a New Zealand trip, which I think we would definitely like to lead in the future. As I'm sure that the asker is thinking, this is a fantastic landscape too. beautiful place, the fjordlands and the national parks there. And on top of that, they have their own endemic wildlife. That's a trip that I think we may be looking at in the future. So keep an eye out for that.
Excellent, thanks. So if I am just using an iPhone on a photo trip, would there be advice or instruction for me on how to maximize the use of my camera there?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think what we can do today with smartphones and photography is really interesting. It's really exciting. It changes photography in a lot of ways. What I love about it is it reduces some of the settings thinking, so you're thinking a lot more creatively, which is really cool. So all of our photo guides are trained in smartphone photography just as they are in traditional photography with a bigger camera. And so you can still get some great shots. I think the key here to remember, if you're coming to one of these trips, you're coming with a passion for photography first and foremost. So remember that if you want to be in those same moments to get those kinds of photos and bring just a smartphone, you can definitely work towards that. I will preface, like a lot of these trips are very wildlife focused, where the zoom on a smartphone isn't going to be as good. And so if you have an opportunity to borrow or rent a camera with the bigger lens and learn how to use it ahead of time, I highly recommend doing that, so you still get some of those closer photos you're hoping for and not just the zoomed in photos on your smartphone.
Great. Well, thank you. Let me ask you this too. If I am coming on a photo trip, do you recommend that I bring a laptop so that I can edit along the way, or a hard drive just to maybe save them so I can look at them later?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not certainly expected. I know some photography tours and workshops, they're very much designed as there's going to be classroom time most days of the trip. We don't necessarily do that. We have a presentation at the beginning and maybe one or two throughout the trip, depending on the discretion of the guests as well as the guide. But we're not going to spend dedicated time in the classroom with your laptop editing, because we want, if you flew all the way out to a place like Southern Africa, we want you out there looking for the wildlife, not spending your time in the classroom. So it's not expected that you have a laptop or even a hard drive, but it's kind of up to you and what your photography is like, how many photos you might take while you're out there. I usually bring my laptop and a hard drive because then that gives me the freedom. If I max out my photography, my memory cards, I can throw them onto my hard drive and keep going. Or I've gotten a really cool shot I'm very excited about. I want to edit it and send it home to family and friends. I'm going to bring my laptop, do a quick edit that night, and then share it. So it's kind of up to you. If you bring enough memory cards, you're never going to run out. You don't need to bring a camera, or you don't need to bring a computer or a hard drive. But if you want that flexibility, then I would recommend it.
Great. Mike, thank you so much for the advice and the overview of the trips, but unfortunately, we are just about out of time for questions. So I'd like to throw it back to you for any closing comments.
Yeah, I will say, as I've been working with NatHab as a photography leader and now as a photography director for 8 years, and NatHab is a really special company in a lot of ways. The biggest part for me is the fact that we have such a strong conservation connection. We're not only visiting these places to see these phenomenal wildlife and landscapes, but we're having an opportunity to now protect these places at the same moment. It's a really special company. I'm very honored to work for them. And I hope you get a chance to go on a trip with myself or one of our other excellent photo leaders. Every single one of them are a friend of mine. And so hopefully you'll get a chance to go out with us this year or next and get some great photos. And do share my way. I'd love to see what our photographers get out there in the field every single day that we're running one of these trips.
Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And well, I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab and do a photo trip, please give us a call at 800-543-8917, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us right here at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. So long, everybody. We will see you next time.